Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to this week's coverlet of comfort video. This is the last week of stitching on the August piece, Ancestral Lines, and I've done quite a lot more on mine since last week. I've left a couple of things that I'm doing unfinished so I can show you. So last week I did this DNA type interlaced running stitch. I've done some more couching, and I'm couching here with the cross stitch, so I was going to show you how I'm doing that. I also did some threading through of my background stitching, which I talked about last week. The idea occurred to me, so I'll show you how I'm doing that. And then I did some chain stitch. It just seemed to fit with the DNA. You know, the DNA stitching that we did looks like a large chain stitch, so I did some chain stitch. So I've left a little bit of that unfinished, so it's going to be bits and bobs, and it's quite standy outy, I think, because of the red against the cream. So my plan then, when I've done all my couching and my fancy stitching, is to maybe just stitch some lines over. You know me, my solution is always to add more stitching until I'm happy with it. So I think I'm going to just stitch some lines in different shades of red, maybe just running stitch, maybe some back stitch, maybe some whipped running stitch, whatever. But there's quite a bit more stitching to do, so I will be doing that through the week, and I'll probably show you the finished stitching next week, which will be onto the new prompt, which I'm very excited about because yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that, but I won't say any more. So let's get started on the couple of leftover bits that I've got. I'm just going to sit down. I was standing up so that I could see what you see. So for the chain stitch, I've got this little bit, I tied these two together so I could remember which red I was using. So sorry, I'll just undo that. So I've got just a tiny bit left. This is some silk that was dyed with madder, which is a root of a plant, a natural dye. It's quite thick, so I'll have to use a thicker needle, but this is what I've been using for my chain stitching. Let's get a thicker needle. Choose one, Catherine. I think it needs to be one of those big ones. So just in case you need a reminder on chain stitching. This silk is quite, it's not really tricksy, but you see it separates. Although you can't really separate it and stitch with it. I have tried because it snaps. And it twists, so I'm not taking lazy girl lengths, I'm just taking short lengths. I'm being sensible for a change, which is, with chain stitching, does take quite a lot of thread, so I think I've got enough to get to the end. But yeah, I'm just taking a normal length, not my usual lazy girl length. You could wax it if you were a thread waxer. I sometimes wax my thread for piecing. I'm inclined not to for fancy stitching because it kind of coats it and makes it less fluffy. What I've just done there is run that through my mouth. Obviously if you're less primitive than me, you might not want to do that, but it's put my DNA in it, which seems appropriate. I haven't pricked my finger. I think someone mentioned that in the Facebook group, that they pricked their finger and got their DNA in the piece. But that I've just kind of dampened it slightly because it was a bit kinky from being wrapped around that thing. It still is. Anyway, so where I've finished off here, I'm going to come up right in the very end of that last chain. And if you were starting fresh, you would just start somewhere, and then you just want to lay your thread down on the surface of your cloth, and then you go back in the same hole that you came out of, or just next to it. Actually, you don't want to go in the very same hole, but as close as you can. And you come forward however long you want your links to be, and then just pull through so that you trap the loop. And then I hold that out the way with my thumb and go again. And I'm weaving about and I'm crossing what's already there. This is another piece of sari silk that I twisted tightly and couched on, and I just twisted it as I went. It's really warm here today. It's been really, well, you know, warm by British standards. It's probably not warm by some of your standards. I've got the window and the door open. It's the afternoon. But, I'm doing this 2 days before because I'm going out tomorrow and Wednesday. I'm having busy times lately, which is lovely. But yeah, still making sure that I'm getting your videos up for you. So I'm just going, you know, I didn't sort of plan ahead with my route. I'm just making it up as I go along, and I'm not pulling too tightly. And I'm not really worrying about the fluff getting trapped and all that. In the grand scheme of things, it all looks fine to me. So yeah, I know that some of you mentioned that how dominant your first line looked, your first red line, especially if you did what I did and did a cream background. The answer to that is to blend it in by just stitching more. And you know, if you wanted to keep all your lines independent, if that was a look you like, then you could absolutely do that, but I'm crisscrossing them and just, you know, filling in the spaces and just going where I think I want to, really. I'm keeping these chain stitches quite big. The other thing with this silk is it comes unplied, so I'm putting a twist in it as I go as well, putting the twist back in. Just paying attention to the thread. So I'm not to the end yet and my thread's running out, so I'm going to have to get a new bit just to finish it off. So just to couch that last link down, I'm coming up through the chain and I'm just going down just outside it, just to trap it down. And that's how you finish off. And then I'll get another bit and come back up through that same place and just finish my chain, but I can do that afterwards. But you see how that's really, you just have to, you know, if you're using different threads to what you normally stitch with, just pay attention to how they behave. And you know, you might have to make little adjustments like the length of thread you choose or whatever. So now I've got this was some of this lovely silk from Jill, naturally dyed silk, and I'm using, to couch that down, I've got this embroidery. This is a vintage embroidery floss, and I'm just using 2 strands. So there we go, so I've got my needle threaded and I've put a knot in my thread. So I was working actually off the whole length. I was just unwinding some and laying it down where I wanted. I only cut it because I wanted to carry on with other stitching and leave a bit to show you. Sorry, I've got something, it's a bit of cheese or something, just had my lunch, sorry. So how I've been doing my cross stitch, I've been going one way with diagonal lines and then coming back the other way, so I'll just show you the movements I've been making. So I've got one diagonal line here going that way, I hope you can see. The rest I've already made the crosses. So I'm going to come up. So I come up on the opposite side of the thing I'm couching, and then I make the first stitch, so I go across and move forward a bit to make a diagonal. That makes sense. And then put my needle in and out and take another forward stitch, staying on the same side, like that. And then I jump back with my thread, and I'll move the thread out of the way so I can show you. And this time I'm going in behind, so in a line. Do you see that stitch there, that first stitch I made? I'm going to go back in opposite that, but in a straight line, and then come out again opposite where the thread's coming out in a straight line, if that makes sense. So, and then I come forward again to make the diagonal and go forward, and then I go in back above where that thread's going in, but directly opposite, and then come forward above where that thread's coming out. I hope that's clear. I'll zoom you in so that you can see. So if you lay the thread on it, you know, if you want to get the idea, just to audition where the thread's going to go, you see I want that line to be diagonal like that. So I'll go in there, come forward, I'm coming forward or maybe a 1/4 inch, and then I go back opposite where that stitch went through, and then come out opposite where my thread's coming out. So I'm making the same couching movements that I normally make, taking a forward stitch on one side, jumping across, and then taking a forward stitch on the other side, but I'm just doing that on the diagonal and then coming back because I want all my crosses to link up. Obviously you could do this any number of ways. This is just the way I was doing it. And then I'm just sort of auditioning where my bit of stuff that I'm couching is going to lay, and then holding it with my thumb as I go. And then once you get into the rhythm of it, it's a nice rhythm. It's as if you're just doing normal couching, only you're making half across. Because for me, as always, the finished look is less important, still important, but less important than the fact that it's enjoyable to do. That's just me. I'm going to cross my couch bit of sari silk. I'm making sure always that I'm not covering the beads or the French knots. I'm just kind of sneaking through where there's only the feather stitch. I think I went wrong there, but never mind. I'll sort it out when I come back. So forward on a diagonal and stitch forward, and then back, and then forward again. I hope that is clear enough if you want to do it this way. It's one of those things, I think, like many things, that it's difficult to put into words. But I just hope you can see. Maybe here, when I get down here where it's a bit plainer. So a forward stitch, and then you go back in opposite there, but you move forward. So you're always stitching forward. It's just that the second stitch in the movement, you go in backwards. So I'll just do a couple more just to get myself to the end. And the placement is, you know, it's a guideline. It doesn't have to be exact. So now I'm going to shoot through to the back on that last stitch. I'm going to trim off this bit, save that because that's precious. And I'm going to turn the whole thing around and then just simply come back the other way and finish off the crosses. So now I'm going to come, so this is my first diagonal, so I want to come up in this corner. If you can visualize, the cross is going to be here. So I want to come up in this corner of where the cross is going to be. And then I'm basically doing the same thing but in the other direction. So then I'm going to go down, and like I said, I want them all to connect. So I'm going to go down into this stitch and then forward into the next stitch. And there's my first cross. And then I'm coming back into here, and then coming forward into that there. Make sure I don't get tangled around that end as we go through. Do you see? So again, going forward. So I'm just looking at where those diagonals are coming out. So I'm going along to the next one where it's going into the cloth, and then stitching forward into the one further. And then I've got this diagonal here that I need to cross, so I go back in and then forward into that into where that diagonal is coming out. It's how I cross stitch anyway. It's just being done over something couched on. Just makes it a little bit harder to see maybe, but the principle is exactly the same. It's a bit thick there. So I hope you get the idea. But if you just pay attention to your diagonals and make sure they all get crossed, and if you want them all to join up, you just make sure that where you're going in and coming out is the next diagonal in the line, the one that needs to be crossed. So I'll just finish that one off and end off that thread. and I can finish that later. And on the back of this cross stitch, it's the same as my normal couching. It looks the same. You get these little lines of running stitches, parallel running stitches. Do you see? So this here, this is normal couching here on this sari silk. I just did my straight stitches over, forward, back, forward, over, you know. And there you've got the double row of running stitches on the back. And here, this is where I was doing the cross stitch. I've got the same row of running stitches on the back. So the next thing I wanted to show you is how I did this kind of random-ish weaving in and out. I think I used some of this, which is some vintage mending yarn. I'll probably get away with a slightly bigger bit. And I'm going to get a big needle because I'm weaving through, I only need to come up at the beginning and down at the end. The rest of it will happen on the surface of the cloth. It's just quite challenging to thread this stuff. I'll fold it around the eye and try and get it through that way. Someone told me, this isn't Appleton's, but just passing it on. No, that's not all gone through. I don't like licking wool because you get all the bits in your mouth, but sometimes you have to. I could get a needle threader, I suppose, but I don't know where one is. Bingo, done it. So yeah, someone said about, I had some of these vintage Appleton wools. Someone said that they had heard, I think from one of the Roxy girls, you know, Roxy Rachel or Roxy Sarah, that they are not colour fast, some of them. So just be aware of that. I talked earlier on about testing things. If you're worried about things being colour fast, if you know you're going to be laundering your quilt a lot, test the fibre first before you put it in your quilt. And ideally in whatever way you're going to wash it. So if you know you're going to wash it in warm water, you should soak your piece of fibre in warm water to see if it bleeds. I don't think I'm going to be washing this much or at all, because I think it's probably going to be a wall hanging, so I'm not really worried. Yeah, there's also colour catchers and things. Someone was going to, someone talked about eco-friendly colour catchers, because colour catchers are made of polyester type stuff. I keep meaning to look into it, but I haven't yet. So if anyone knows if there are biodegradable colour catchers, do let us know. Okay, so I think I'm just going to come over, I did the weaving thing here. I think I'm just going to do some more weaving over the top of it. So I'm just going to come up somewhere towards the edge here with my knot, and I've turned my needle around so I've got my eye, and then all I did was just go under some of my background stitches on a vague diagonal. So I go under 2 there and pull that through, and then I can go across to the next stitch on the straight line that I'm on and come back up the other way. And then I wasn't coming up, you could if you wanted to, but I wasn't coming up in line all the time when I came out. When I went in I was going on a line, but when I came out I was going 1 further or 2 further. So here I've gone through 2 across and back up again. I'm going to go through 3, but it's just paying attention to how it looks as you're doing it and what you like the look of. Don't put it too tight again. So now I'm going to go across to the next stitch on my line. You could just go back down the diagonal, but then you'll get a more pointy, do you see? You'll get a point rather than this gentle curve. I just prefer the gentle curve, so I'm going across to the next stitch and then coming through on a diagonal. I happen to have diagonals. If your stitches are more offset, just choose whichever ones you like the look of best. I think I'm going to come right down, maybe to there. And like so. And then come across 1 on that straight line and then just come back up. and as long as I don't come out in the same place, because I want my lines to be irregular, I can go less or further, whichever, you know, shorter or longer. And I found this really nice to do, and I think it's something I will do more in future. I've never thought of doing it before in my background stitching, but you know, when I do this background stitching, which I do a lot on things, even threading through not a contrast but a toning colour, I think would also be an interesting texture. Now here I want to go through this stitch and it's got this red through it. No matter, I can either go under the red or over it. I don't mind if they're crossing each other. There's no handy stitch there, so I think I will just come out there. I was kind of being guided by what was there really, and then come across to that next stitch and then go on again on the diagonal. There we go. So again, I'll crisscross. I might come right down. If I wanted to get right down here rather than go all the way down in one go, you know, threading through, you could if you like the look of it, but rather than threading through all that way, I'd like to sort of come down in a wibbly motion. So I'll come down, go in. Just come down on the diagonal, maybe that far. And then I'll go up, but I'll just go up a couple of stitches, maybe to there. And then I'll come back down again, move across one stitch and then come back down again. And again further, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. You see what I mean? So I'm coming down but waving about as I come down. So I'm just looking ahead a bit to see where I might want my thread to go, and then in advance working myself along. And even here, if I wanted to, I could now, I've got these feather stitches, I could go under those as well. And then I can't then start going that way because it'll pull on my feather stitch, so I could now, if I wanted to, because I've got nothing to thread through in the middle of this sari silk, I can just take a couple of running stitches and then maybe go under that bit of couching, just so I've worked myself over. So I've sort of broken that line, but you could find a story in that as well, couldn't you, if you're talking about ancestral lines, you know. Sometimes the ancestral lines get broken. Here I could, if I wanted to, go completely under the sari silk, and then the line will be completely broken. Or it would be hidden rather than broken, you know, it's the line's still there but it's hidden from view. So I like to think about ways of storytelling while I'm stitching and responding to what's on the cloth already rather than deciding in advance, you know, what I'm going to do right down to the last stitch. I just find this a more absorbing way of working. So I'm right over here now. This is quite a big space, so I could just go further on into that space. I'm just flicking my eye back to what I've done every now and then. And again, this motion makes your thread twist. And in the case of this, it's twisting it, it's plying it further, so it's becoming thinner because it's less fluffy. So I'm just going to unply it a little bit. Come back through there and go under that again. Oh, now I'm under the edge of the strip. I'm under the cloth. I just want to be under the couch bit. There we go. I'll carry on that way a bit further. I just like all these waves and interlocking lines, and it just seems, I'm finding it visually pleasing, but I'm also liking the idea of the story it might tell with regards to ancestry and you know, our own actual family trees, like I said back in the beginning, but also just the story of living things, even not just humanity, but and cultural connections and all that kind of thing. How sometimes things are hidden from view, but they're still there. You know, sometimes they are knowable but unknown, if you see that distinction. So that's it really. I mean, I might do more of this because I enjoy doing it and I like the line it gives, but I think you get the idea, and I'm just going to unthread that for now. In fact, no, I'll carry on and finish this off camera, and then I'll come back and show you the final stitch that I want to do with you. Okay, so I've went as far as till my yarn ran out, which was up here somewhere, here. So I'll carry on with that later on. And you see here and there I kind of played with the shape I was making with that one that was already there. So it's kind of echoing the DNA. It's not regular like the DNA, it's more organic because I was varying where I went in and out. But you can play with that as well, you know, you can look at how it's interacting with the stitching that's already there. Here it's made a double, almost a double echoed line. So the final thing I want to do is I want to do some whipped running stitch. So I've got some of that Appleton's wool in my needle, and I'm going to put some straight lines in, but I don't think I'm going to put a straight line all the way through. I'm going to use my stitches that are already there. So I'm just looking where I've got a line of stitching, maybe this line here, which is kind of in the open, or maybe this line here, this lower line. So then I'll come up just at the beginning of the first stitch of that line, and then I'm simply going to just go under every stitch with the eye of my needle in the same direction every time. I'm coming towards myself every time, but it could easily be away from yourself as well. So just under every stitch in that line. And again, if you wanted to put straight lines all the way through to contrast with the wibbly lines, then you absolutely could, but I'm quite liking the idea of some straight lines that are broken. And because my background stitching is tan coloured or cream coloured, contrasting with the red, even the line itself looks a little bit broken. So again, I'm not pulling too tightly, I'm just letting it lay on the surface of the cloth. Let's see how that looks. I've really enjoyed stitching this month, and I'm very glad to hear that many of you have said the same. I think it's the stitch meditation scroll type aspect of it, although it's not going to be on a scroll, at least mine isn't. I know some of you who aren't making the coverlet have stitched along this month and are just keeping it as a scroll. That's really nice to see. So I'm just stopping every now and then and looking at what I've got and seeing if I'm enjoying the contrast, which I think I am. The contrast of the line itself, the path it's taking is straight, but the line itself is almost a corkscrew because of the nature of the whipping of the running stitch. I just wanted to say as well, while I'm doing this, about the I showed you last Friday my 8 patches with the moon in the middle, making them a 9 patch, and a few people asked, because I talked about that being for me an extra border around the outside, and that there will be a monthly prompt right up to and including December, and then that border I'll work out how to put that on when I've finished all those monthly sections. I will, and probably continuing a bit into the new year, so that nobody's feeling rushed, carry on making videos on the coverlet of comfort into 2026, as many as we need. for the finishing off. So I might suggest other ways to put borders around if you don't feel like doing the 9 patch. I'll talk about putting a backing on if you don't like the backstory idea, you know, just leaving everything showing. I'll talk about different ways to finish the edges, all that kind of thing. So never fear that I'm going to get to December, tell you the last prompt and then just leave you all, you know. And I'm even thinking then, when I think I'm done, when I think I've shown you everything I can show you, maybe then at that point we'll have a Q&A. So I'll maybe ask you in advance if you've got any outstanding questions or queries or things you want to see, to put all those somewhere here under a video or on a community post or something like that. And then I can do a final video wherever we are then in 2026, answering all your queries. And I say final video, but you know, if you're behind and you come up later with a question, just put it under another video, whatever video, or put it in the Facebook group if you're in there, or you know, message me in some way. I'm not going to just leave you all, because this has been a big project, a big commitment. I've come to the end of my line of stitching, but there's this handy stitch here in the DNA, so I think I'm going to just shoot through to the back into that stitch just to finish my line off. Now you can, if you want to make a stronger line, come and whip back the other way. So just turn round and just come through again from the other direction. I don't think I want to make that line any stronger. I think the fact that it's straight amongst all the wibblies is different enough. I don't want to make it stand out anymore. So rather than breaking this off, I think I'm going to go up a bit, maybe into here, and just do some whipping in there. So I just put my finger where I want to come out, so that's quite a long way to go. I'm just going to take some little bites of the backing cloth just to get myself over there rather than stopping and starting. If it was much longer I'd stop and start, but it's only an inch or so, so I'll just do that. Just so there's not a great big loop on the back. And then I'll come back up. Maybe there, in that stitch that's crossing that red line. And then let's whip in the other direction just for a change. So now I'm just going to go under the stitch and away from me. So basically we're doing the same thing that we were doing with the DNA and with what I just did before, whipping through my my background stitches, but you know, going on diagonals, only we're just staying in one line. So these are all variations on the same theme, really. Just ways of adding extra layers to your stitching that you can use anywhere in any of your work. You know, if you've got stitches down already, you can go back and embellish some of them further by weaving through them in these ways, with contrasting thread or the same colour thread or whatever. And it's a brilliant way of using your thicker threads that are not nice to really stitch with on their own, or you know, not nice, that you don't like stitching with on your own. Now I'm going to go into that next stitch. I know I'm crossing that, but I quite like that. Just breaking things up a bit. And then my stitching's now disappeared under the sari silk, so I think I will go under the sari silk with my wool and come out the other side and then start going through one of those lines. But I don't think you need to see me do that. So that's almost like, so here's my first line, and then it disappears and jumps over there and re-emerges. And again, I think that's telling a story somehow about ancestry and, you know, things disappearing and then re-emerging. So I think that was quite a lot. Hopefully that's enough to finish this month's stitching. I'm going to do quite a bit more of this, I think, and the wibbly couching, no, not couching, it's like reverse couching, wibbly weaving, interlacing over the top, and then maybe just some running stitches, I'll see. but whatever else I do, obviously I'll show you next week. So I'm very excited, like I said, for September. I can't believe it's September already. That for me personally will be the year anniversary of me moving in here on my own, so that's quite momentous for me. And I've got a theme that hopefully will speak to everybody in different, in different ways, but will speak to everybody for September. So I'm really looking forward to that. So meanwhile, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy finishing stitching on your Ancestral Lines piece, and looking forward to next month. And lots of love. See you next time. Thank you for watching. Happy stitching. Bye bye. Kisses. Bye bye.